There are very few people in this world who don't have the love of their family. A loving mother, a proud father, a caring brother or sister, or beautiful children. We all know what it is to have people who love you unconditionally and whom you love back, who you spent years together creating memories. We all know the warm feeling of the embrace of a loved one, but unfortunately, sometimes the world isn't fair and you can have a loved one violently taken from you forever. A loving mother, a proud father, a caring brother or sister, or God forbid, a beautiful child snatched away from you forever in the blink of an eye. The pain of someone being taken before their time is truly unimaginable. Several thoughts go through your head when it happens. How did this happen? Did they suffer? What could I have done to prevent this? As you get a handle on the situation, your thoughts start to branch out even further. I'll never get to see them again. What's the last thing I said to them? We'll never have any memories together ever again. It takes a long time to stop mourning and be thankful for the good times, and even when you finally do, they're bittersweet. It's a piece of you that is fractured and never truly heals. It's hard to try and imagine if you've never experienced it, but we can all think of people in our lives and how we would be affected if they were taken before their time. It's truly something I hope never happens to anyone that I know or myself or to anyone watching. I've been fortunate that, again, for me, I haven't had to face these challenges, but I have witnessed how badly it damages people close to me and how it takes years to get over. The truth is, a lot of people never really do fully recover. The reason I speak of this is because unfortunately we live in a society where bad people do bad things to good people. People have their lives taken before their time every single day. We do the best we can to discourage it, we jail those responsible so they can't do it again, and so they can be punished for their actions. It gives the family some closure to know the people who hurt the ones they love face punishment and can't fracture the lives of other families. Unfortunately, however, we are now going through an incredibly disturbing trend that threatens to hurt these families and the victims of all crimes even more. The attempt to lionize and make martyrs of the people who brought their families so much pain and suffering. This is what some have called the wrongful conviction movement, and it's gaining traction all across the US. The movement is led by some of the most powerful and influential people in the nation. The most prominent supporter is millionaire celebrity Kim Kardashian, and one of her latest crusades is trying to free convicted murderer Julius Jones. Although most people only know Kim Kardashian as an airheaded bimbo and for her fat ass being on magazine covers, very few people remember that her father, Robert Kardashian, is most famous for getting another murderer, O.J. Simpson, off for the murder of his wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and Rod Goldman. The particulars of how they got O.J. off are incredibly relevant to this conversation, but we'll address them a bit later. What I'd like to address now is how powerful the wrongful conviction movement is in this country. As I create this video, Kim Kardashian has over 236 million followers on Instagram, 70 million followers on Twitter, and 33 million followers on Facebook. By comparison, the President of the United States, Joe Biden, has 17.8 million followers on Instagram, 31.3 million followers on Twitter, and 11.4 million followers on Facebook. This basically means that Kim Kardashian reaches more people directly with her social media messages than the President of the United States at least 5 times over. When she promotes an agenda, hundreds of millions of people see it without even needing the help of the institutional media, which, believe me, they get help from them anyways. Examples of this are James Corden's Late Show did a segment on trying to free Julius Jones that had 71,000 views on YouTube. His show averages 971,000 views per night on television. Articles and videos by the Washington Post, Vice, ABC, NBC, and the New York Times pour in pushing the wrongful conviction narrative after the celebrities like Kim Kardashian choose their cases to be their pet cause. At this point, 6.3 million people have signed the Change.org petition to have Julius Jones released from prison, a petition that the creator says she started after viewing a documentary by Viola Davis pointing Julius Jones in a positive light. There have been protests at the Oklahoma Parole Board and Commutation Recommendation Board to have him released, and pressure put on the governor of Oklahoma to commute his sentence and try to free him from prison. If you're a lowly government employee who just comes to work every day to get a paycheck, then goes home to have dinner with your family, it can be quite a jarring and frightening thing to be thrust into the spotlight like this over a case that wasn't even on your radar a month ago. The Oklahoma governor, who governs a state of only 4 million people, has probably never before gotten this level of scrutiny and pressure of the Hollywood elites and national news organizations. The most worrying thing for these people put in this position by these campaigns is that most likely they know that the narrative put forth by the media and the elites is more important than the truth. On July 28, 1999, Paul Howell was returning home with his two daughters after a day of back to school shopping. Paul was living with his sister and parents at the time as he had fallen on hard times. As Paul's sister was walking up to the car to greet them, another man, Julius Jones, was approaching the car as well, having followed him home in another car with the driver Christopher Jordan. Paul Howell's daughter, Rachel, who was only a child at the time, saw Julius Jones approach the car and waved to him. Being a young child, she had no idea what was about to happen. Julius Jones then proceeded to put a gun to Paul Howell's head and pull the trigger. Paul's sister ran towards the car and grabbed the two young girls and raced them back to the house to safety. Julius Jones then pulled Paul out of the car, got in the front seat, and ran Paul over on the way out of the driveway. Just like that, a family destroyed. A father taken away from his daughters before their very eyes. No more happy memories that these young girls would share with their father. In the following days, police were able to find and arrest Julius Jones and Christopher Jordan. Due to the overwhelming evidence and witness testimony, Julius Jones was convicted of the murder of Paul Howell, and the Howell family got their justice. Or so we thought. Another major player aside from Kim Kardashian in the wrongful conviction movement is the Innocence Project. The Innocence Project was founded, of course, by another lawyer on the O.J. Simpson defense team, Barry Scheck. It is an organization that claims to try to exonerate people improperly convicted of crimes. The Innocence Project is, overall, a good idea. There should be people who work to overturn wrongful convictions, regardless of how rare they are. There are people who are falsely convicted in this system due to unfortunate and unlucky circumstances, and it's good that there are people who will fight for them to be released. There's few things more horrible in this country than having your freedom taken away for something you didn't do. Unfortunately, the Innocence Project has a sordid history of trying to free guilty people, and worse yet, trying to paint innocent people as guilty in their stead. One of the Innocent Project's regular tactics to free guilty people from jail is to try and get a patsy to replace them. Examples of this tactic include the Rodney Reed case, where the Innocence Project falsely blames the victim's fiancé for her murder, the Kevin Cooper case, where the Innocent Project falsely blames three white men, as well as a man who was at a concert for the murder of the Ryan family, the Purvis Payne case, where the Innocence Project tried to blame an ex-husband who was literally in jail at the time of the murder, and now the Julius Jones case, where the Innocence Project is trying to blame the driver, Christopher Jordan. In all of these cases, the patsy the Innocence Project is trying to portray as the real killer is definitely not the real killer. Which makes sense. The Innocence Project might be an evil group trying to get guilty people out of jail, but they would never blame someone who they actually thought could be sent to jail in their stead, right? The single most infamous instance of this strategy is the story of Alastair Simon and Anthony Porter. There's an incredible documentary called A Murder in the Park on this specific case that I encourage you to check out so you can see the extent of the tactics used, but to put it bluntly, spoiler alert, the Innocence Project coerced a false confession off an innocent man in order to free a murderer just before he was set to be executed. They then paid the innocent man's lawyer to have him take a plea deal and get his client sent to prison. The innocent man, Alastair Simon, went to prison for 15 years before his conviction was overturned, and the murderer, Anthony Porter, was set free. Not only that, but Anthony Porter being set free by the Innocence Project led to the end of the death penalty in Illinois. But hey, fortunately, this is America. This is all done in the court of law. One side provides their evidence, the other side provides their evidence, and the person who's telling the truth wins, right? The biggest thing that the wrongful conviction movement uses to their advantage is ignorance of the population. They can, and do, make up whatever lies they want, and the idiots that support Kim Kardashian will just believe them and repeat their talking points without ever actually looking into them. Take the Julius Jones case, for instance. On the Innocence Project's website, right now, they have a fact sheet about Julius Jones. The three main claims are all 100% false. Line number 1. They state Julius Jones was at home eating dinner with his family during the murder. a lie that his family is happy to repeat in order to try and free their family member. In reality, Julius Jones was spotted by multiple witnesses not at home around the time of the murder, including the family members of Paul Howell, who literally saw him commit the murder. Julius Jones's own lawyers admitted to the fact that he was not actually at his parents' home when the murder happened, according to Julius Jones himself. One of the people his parents claimed was with them at the home on the night of the murder admits that she was not there at the time of the murder, but the night before. Lie number 2. The Innocence Project claims that Julius Jones did not match the description provided by Paul Howell's sister of the shooter, which is an interesting claim since Paul Howell's sister is still around and still states it was Julius Jones. She still gives the exact same description she did at the time of trial, that Jones had sideburns that stuck out about an inch below his skull cap. Lie number 3. The Innocence Project claims that Paul Howell's sister's description actually matches Christopher Jordan because he had cornrows. In reality, Paul Howell's sister describes Christopher Jordan, cornrows and all, sitting in the other car as the driver while the shooting is occurring. The rest of the claims made by the wrongful conviction movement regarding this case are the obvious strategy of cry racism. In most cases that I have already mentioned, the defendant is black and the victims were white. It worked in the OJ trial, so fuck it. Let's just do it every single time we want to get a guilty person out of jail. The wrongful conviction movement infers that the only reason the convicted killers such as Julius Jones were convicted in the first place is because police, lawyers, judges, juries, and the appeals courts were all racist. They often don't even try to prove it in any way, they just simply say that it was an all-white jury, or they just make up a claim about someone related to the trial, like a juror or a police officer, making a racist statement years later, usually after the person is dead and can't defend themselves. How convenient. The new argument that has allowed this bullshit narrative to take hold even more has been the systemic racism conspiracy theory. For those who don't know, the systemic racism conspiracy theorists believe that America and all its institutions are racist because they produce different outcomes among races. A brilliant marsupial content creator coined the phrase racism of the gaps to describe this sort of conspiratorial thinking. A popular play on the God of the Gaps argument, this means that without evidence, you can blame any difference between groups on racism. The best part about this conspiracy theory is that you don't actually have to show any racism to prove that an institution is systematically racist. You can just claim difference equals racism, and denial of this conspiracy theory also equals racism. How convenient! In the Julius Jones case, the wrongful conviction movement is doing their best to blame racism for Jones's conviction. They falsely claim that a juror uttered a racial slur during the trial. Court documents show that he didn't, including testimony from the other jurors about the alleged incident at the time. They falsely claim that the arresting officer used a pro-gamer word when arresting Jones. This, of course, was never mentioned at trial or any time within the last 20 years until now. They falsely claim that prosecutors used racialized language, but when pressed on what the prosecutors said during the trial, the best they could come up with was describing Jones as being on the prowl. God forbid a person who stalks and murders a man in front of his daughters be described as on the prowl. What is the world coming to? The truth is, in America, we have among the most fair and unbiased criminal justice system in the entire world. Crimes are prosecuted and trials are held before a judge or jury of your peers. You are given the opportunity to defend yourself with a lawyer of your choosing, or by a lawyer provided to you for free by the state. You are permitted to see the prosecution's entire case against you, and to even have a hand in selecting the jury that will be hearing your case. You have a judge that will make sure that the lawyers prosecuting and defending their clients act fairly. If you are found guilty, you have multiple chances to appeal the verdict. If found innocent, you cannot be prosecuted again. If your appeal goes through and your decision is reversed, then you can sue the state for damages if it is found that they committed wrongdoing against you in order to convict you. The strategy for the Innocence Project and the wrongful conviction movement is to avoid the court system altogether. They want mob justice and pressure campaigns to convince politicians to ignore the rule of law and basically just do what they want without having to go through the courts. There's a reason Julius Jones lost 13 appeals to his conviction, same as there's a reason the wrongful conviction movement is trying to get his punishment commuted instead of trying to give him another chance at appeal. In reality, Our justice system is not perfect, but you'd be hard pressed to find a system that does it better. It's fundamentally built on the presumption of innocence. We believe that 10 guilty men should walk free before one innocent man goes to prison, or woman, or women, or whatever, which is why we so heavily tilt the scales in the court on the side of the defendant. Our standard for convicting someone is that there must be no reasonable doubt that they committed the crime. This is why, when defendants go to trial and are convicted, there's only about a 7% chance of an appeal being successful, because in order to convict, a guilty verdict must be definitive. In the case of Julius Jones, the verdict was definitive. There's a reason groups like the Innocence Project and Kim Kardashian try to claim institutional racism when there is none, so they can, without evidence, claim racism impacted the trial. The US public hates racism and will virtue signal, march, and try to get murderers out of jail to prove it. It seems funny that today the term racism has an ever expanding and nebulous meaning while still maintaining the same extreme emotional reaction. How convenient! Most people who view this video probably already knew the circumstances of the Julius Jones case. Content creators such as Atheism is Unstoppable and Actual Justice Warrior have put out great videos describing the circumstances of their crimes as well as the evidence that was used to find them guilty. While social media personalities such as Jack Posobiec, whatever, highlight these videos and the plight of the Howell family. They've also done a great job debunking the lies Kim Kardashian, the Innocence Project, and the wrongful conviction movement have put out in order to drive the narrative in their favor. But the truth is, we're massively outgunned here, people. I told you the numbers. Kim K has a metric fuck ton of people who follow her and spout her talking points like the loyal NPCs they are. One of my goals with this video, besides trying to start a YouTube career that makes $1 million, isn't to prove the obvious that Jones is guilty of murdering Paul Howell. It's more to ask you to get yourself involved. It doesn't have to be marching down to Oklahoma to the governor's mansion. It doesn't have to be making YouTube videos like I decided to do for this case. All you really have to do is post on the governor's Facebook page, comment on videos about the case, and fight back against these people in the same way they fight to free a convicted murderer. It's crucial to defeat these people. Secondly, the second reason, I'm trying to figure out why the fuck these people are doing this. They've chosen to lionize the most obviously guilty and evil people imaginable, and one has to ask the question, what the fuck? Kevin Cooper stabbed 2 parents and 2 children to death in their home, leaving 8-year-old Josh Ryan permanently physically scarred without a family. Rodney Reed raped and murdered Stacy Stites, leaving her family and her fiance broken by his actions. Purvis Payne murdered a mother and her baby girl, leaving a 3-year-old child, Nicholas, bloodied and without the warmth of his mother and baby sister forever. Julius Jones shot a father in the head in front of his little girls after they went shopping for their first day of school. Why do these people defend such horrible monsters whose guilt is not in doubt? Why do they trick the masses into supporting such evil and disgusting people? These are questions I don't have an answer to. I don't know why Kim Kardashian chooses to do something so evil that hurts the survivors of these incidents so much. The pain they've already experienced is worse than anything that blobby ass will ever experience, and she chooses to prod them even more. As I stated at the start of this video, try to imagine it's your father, your brother, your child who's been murdered right in front of you. Imagine the thoughts, memories, and nightmares the family of Paul Howell had in the seconds, hours, days, years after his murder. Now imagine that the most powerful celebrities like Kardashian fight to free the people who killed them in front of your very eyes. What would you do to stop them? If you want to help the family of Paul Howell get justice, you can go to justiceforpaulhowell.com. I highly recommend videos by Atheism is Unstoppable and Actual Justice Warrior on this case if you want to get more information about the case so you know how to argue the facts with Jones's defenders. The final decision about whether his sentence is commuted or carried out will be made by the Oklahoma governor, Kevin Stitt. I encourage everyone to contact him by phone or on social media to ask for justice for Paul Howell and his family. Have a nice day.